Hello and welcome to the Collaborative Change Playbook for Coaches. I'm Megan Michael. What is our training plan today? What are we going to learn about? First, we're going to warm up with a little introduction, tell you a little bit about myself. We'll move into the main workout. We'll discuss the collaborative change methods, the affinity diagram process, mind mapping the patterns, the instructive visual process, and then real-world application of this information. Finally, we'll cool down with a conclusion and a list of references. A little bit about myself. I'm Megan Michael, and I am a Level 1 certified rugby coach and referee, currently coaching a high school girls team as well as youth rugby and president of our youth rugby club. Previously, I've coached swimming and soccer, and I've also instructed adult and youth new swimmers. And there is just a list of my personal sports experience from high school through adulthood. Let's talk a little bit about collaborative change. What is the definition of collaborative change? Well, according to Dr. Steve Cady, it's the intentionally purposeful experience of sharing among two or more people in order to achieve mutually desired outcomes. What better place do we need to learn about collaborative change than sports teams? Why does this matter to rugby coaches? Well, every season your team goes through changes. Players leave, new players join. Maybe there's a change in the coaching staff. Perhaps you join a new league with new rules. What are you doing to prepare your team to work together to be successful through that change? Maybe your team wants to implement some new changes. How will you go about doing that? This presentation aims to give you some background, ideas, and considerations for action. So this project required that we learned about 11 collaborative change methods. There were 10 assigned, and we got to choose one of our own. I chose EQHR because I am an EQI practitioner, and I have used the EQI assessment with youth sports coaches in the past and found it extremely useful. As I approached the assignment, I really had no idea what I was getting into. Based on the title of the assignment, I guessed there would be patterns to the methods, but without any previous knowledge of these collaborative change methods, I really did come in with an open mind. And I was really most curious about learning which methods I could use with my own teams and to share with other coaches who want to develop their teams within the sport. Within the 11 collaborative change methods and many others, there are 8 design elements that were identified: invitation, purpose, system, experience, technology, evidence, values, and mastery. My process was simple. As I was reading the Collaborative Change Library and reviewing the other resources, I was really looking at each of these 8 design elements, and they were giving a framework to what I was reading. Similar to the sport of rugby, it often looks confusing or seems confusing and chaotic till you understand the positions and the rules, which give framework to the sport. So my affinity diagram process really started out with a lot of information. I started with a master Excel file, pulling information out of the Collaborative Change Library chapters and simply putting it in the Excel file. And then I created smaller notes from that master file and put them into Lucid and arranged them with colored sticky notes. Finally, I arranged the sticky notes by themes, and I'm going to show you a picture of what that looks like. So here's a picture. On the left there is a snapshot of my Excel file. You see lots of colors. I've broken it down by methods and the 8 design elements. And there's a lot of information in there. I really pulled a lot of quotes out of the CCL and various websites. Then I started arranging them in Lucid there on the right with sticky notes. Much shorter words, pulled out important keywords. The bottom right there is where I began to put them together by themes, and this is where I started to realize that there were some patterns. Last, I created a final affinity diagram which cleanly shows the various themes and what they fall out under the various design elements. So for example, under the design element of invitation, you see 8 themes that emerged. And within those 8 themes, the colors correspond to the methods where I identified that theme. So you could see group focused under invitation applied to 4 different collaborative change methods. From there, I went into mind mapping the process. Now, affinity diagrams and mind maps are different. Affinity diagram is a bit more of a brainstorming process where you just put everything out there. In the mind mapping process, once you've discovered the themes, you can create a visual that shows those various themes. I created mine where each design element was a main branch, and then off of that, I created smaller branches of the various themes, and you can see that as they're arranged by color. In terms of would I change anything, if I had more time, I think I would develop the themes further and maybe see if I could identify some sub-themes that would apply. The next step was moving into the instructive visual. I wanted to create an instructive visual that I could use further along in my career. So for me, I wanted to create a framework for coaches to choose a collaborative method that would be best for their team based on psychological safety level, invitation, and values. And ideally, coaches would choose a method that allows the most comfortable setting for their team to open up, share, and come up with their own ideas about their team's future goals. I like this visual in the sense that it's geared towards coaches, gives them some easy steps for picking a collaborative change method, and I plan to share it with some coaches and see if it's useful. Application. So let's get into a little bit about applying these methods. They really can apply anywhere. Anywhere you have an organization or a team, you can find a method that works for you. I think all of the tools are great, affinity diagrams, mind mapping, and visuals. They all can be useful if applied in the right context. Little evidence. Let's talk history, research, and best practices. So all these approaches came about basically in the 30s when Kurt Lewin fled Nazi Germany. Some early studies started to show these OD themes in social psychology. The 60s and the 70s brought an emergence of the practice in the education industry. And then the 80s brought OD to the business world as the pace of business internationally picked up. The 90s and the 2000s brought the emergence of large group change methods. And I experienced this myself across the entire U.S. Navy as an industry. So what are some tools that I find practical? I'm going to show you what I did and how I use these tools in the real world as a coach. Here's a sample of my team getting together and coming up with some thoughts and ideas on their team goals. You can see these were all their exact words. I just put them on nice stickies and Lucid and put them on this nice slide. After that, started arranging them into some themes. And you can see here we have a theme of tackling. They wanted to get better at tackling. They had some desire to work on their team dynamics. And they wanted to learn new skills and get better. So you could see how this was actually very useful. Themes and patterns emerged, and it allowed the kids, my athletes, to see that they were on the same page for the most part. So let's cool down now. We covered 11 collaborative change methods, the 8 design elements, affinity diagramming, mind mapping, and instructive visuals, and finally how this applies to organization development and change. Your team is always changing. Are you ready to coach that change? Here's my list of references for this presentation, and I invite you to look into them more for further information. And last, I want to thank you for your time, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.